back to Inside City Hall. This coming Tuesday is election day, but besides 3 judicial races, there's really only one contested race in the entire city, and that, of course, is the contest for Staten Island District Attorney. We're joined now by the 2 candidates for that seat for a debate. Dan Donovan is currently the borough's district attorney. He's in his 8th year in office and is seeking to win his 3rd term. He's running on the Republican and Independence Party lines. Mr. Donovan is running against Michael Ryan, an attorney and former official in the city and state divisions of criminal justice, who ran against Mr. Donovan 4 years ago. He's running on the Democratic and Conservative Party lines. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, sir. Thank you for having us, sir.
Let me start with a question that's on everybody's mind, which is Zuccotti Park and the Occupy Wall Street protest. I know that there was a minor semi-protest on the island, but let's assume for a minute that there was a massive protest, that something akin to Zuccotti Park happened in Staten Island. If you were district attorney, and of course you are district attorney, hypothetical though for both of you, how would you handle it? I'm interested in your take on how these issues of First Amendment rights and the rights of residents in commercial establishments to have free access would play out if you were district attorney. Let me start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cyrus Vance and my colleagues handling it quite well. They're going to prosecute offenses when they occur. People have a right to voice their First Amendment privileges, and I don't know what the outcome of those cases are going to be. About 900 people so far have been arrested, but I think Cy Vance is handling it like any district attorney ought to handle it.
Those are interesting questions about what's going on in Zuccotti Park, but the people of Staten Island right now are concerned with the proliferation of gun violence on the North Shore of Staten Island, the burglary problems that are plaguing some of our better neighborhoods on Staten Island, and we have a prescription drug epidemic. I don't believe a protest of that size will come to Staten Island, so quite frankly, I'm more focused on the issues that directly affect the voters of Staten Island.
Okay, fair enough. And on that note, in fact, let's take a look at some graphics. These are numbers from the NYPD showing the crime rates on Staten Island, comparing 10 years ago, or just about 10 years ago now. And we see that murder is up almost 31%, rape is up almost 66%, assaults are down 24%, burglaries are down 36%. These are, although in some cases small numbers, the trends, especially for murder and for rape, very troubling. Let me start with you, Mr. District Attorney. And understanding that you weren't there for every day of those
3 of those years I weren't there.
You weren't there, but what's going on Staten Island?
Crime has gone down since I've taken office January 1st, 2004, 27%. The statistics you showed of the murders, well, after 2001, murders went up in 2002 and they went up in 2003. Those 3 years I wasn't in office. Last year we had 17 murders. 7 of those were domestic violence murders. We had a woman who killed 4 of her children. We had an individual who killed both of his parents. And then we had another person who killed his parents. On Staten Island, you have a better chance of being harmed by someone you know rather than somebody you don't know. And these domestic cases is why I've made fighting domestic violence a priority in my last 4 years and will continue to do so in the next 4 years. It's the biggest crime we have on Staten Island. Last year we had 1,900 instances of domestic violence that were reported. We're going to break over 2,000 this year. And the statistical matter that people, when they measure domestic violence, say about 1 out of every 10 cases are reported. So you can imagine how big this problem is. And it's not unique to Staten Island. It's a national problem, just like the drug epidemic is.
And in the case of rape?
In the rape, a lot of our rapes are between people who know one another. We have a lot of statutory rape. We have a lot of 19-year-old boys who fall in love with a 14-year-old girl because they're in high school together. And they consummate their love, and the young girl's mother finds out and reports it. That's the overwhelming majority of the rapes on Staten Island.
How do you read those numbers?
I read those numbers quite differently. When the drug trade goes unchecked, as it has gone largely unchecked in Staten Island, we find historically that there is a proliferation of the crimes that touch people most: murders, rapes, and robberies in particular. The problem that we have on Staten Island is we have the large-scale warehousing of heroin and cocaine in the South Shore that has gone unchecked for years. And we now have a prescription drug epidemic. We know in cases of domestic violence, when you're dealing with any type of substance abuse, whether it be alcohol introduced into the circumstance or drugs introduced into the circumstance, that a violent verbal altercation will likely escalate into a violent physical altercation when you introduce a mind-altering substance. If we don't get to the problems of stopping the drug trade on Staten Island, killing it where it lives and breeds and starts, then we're never going to get to the bottom of the domestic violence problem.
What would you have done differently had you been elected 4 years ago?
Had I been elected 4 years ago, when I warned of the proliferation of prescription drugs in particular and the large-scale warehousing of heroin and cocaine, active, targeted, smart investigations so we can get at the problems where they start. We know that there are known organized crime figures on the South Shore of Staten Island babysitting cocaine and heroin. We know that there are doctors and individuals getting prescription drugs and peddling these drugs all up and down, particularly the South Shore of Staten Island. You have to go at that problem hard, and you also have to have a public education program to replace the DARE program that was defunded federally, so that parents and students from an earlier age understand the dangers of these drugs and are better educated about it. It takes an all-hands-on-deck approach. We've had other types of epidemics in our history. We've fought them with all of the resources we have to muster. The big problem that I have with the current situation is nobody's sounding the alarm bells but me. 4 years ago, when I said the drugs were the #1 problem on Staten Island, I was poo-pooed by my opponent, and he focused on domestic violence. 4 years later, he's done precious little on either issue.
What's happening with drugs?
In the last year, we've dismantled 4 organizations that were selling prescription drugs. We have prosecuted over 100 people. I saved the drug court on Staten Island, the most successful drug court in the city of New York, by getting the funding put in my budget so that the people who were monitoring the drug program couldn't pull the rug out from under us again next year. I drafted legislation, federal legislation, that Congressman Grimm is carrying in Congress that would require a pharmacist to, in real time, when they distribute a narcotic like Oxycontin, in real time they have to put it in a computer so that someone couldn't leave there after getting a prescription filled and go to another pharmacy and get another prescription filled. Yesterday's New York Times said that 1.4 million prescription pads have been stolen from New York City hospitals in this past year. We don't have a New York City hospital in Staten Island, so none of them were stolen in Staten Island. That's where most of the drugs are happening.
On the specific issue of the warehousing of drugs on the South Shore, which is illegal narcotics. Now,
yeah.
We're not talking about prescription.
There's narcotics throughout our country. Staten Island doesn't suffer any differently than other places do. Prescription drugs, heroin, cocaine, any of those. We've been very successful in prosecuting drug cases. The other day, we convicted in Supreme Court. We've lost 1 case of trial this year. We've won 15. We convicted somebody for selling drugs just this week on Staten Island in Supreme Court at a trial, where we had no buy money, we had no product from the guy, and we arrested him 3 months later. We're doing very, very well.
So, Mr. Wright, your opponent has raised something that's come up throughout this race, which is that as a defense attorney, you often do what defense attorneys do. You defend people, some of whom end up getting convicted. Is that, in your opinion, relevant? Does it make you less credible on this particular issue?
It is entirely irrelevant, and I find it, kind of cheeky that Mr. Donovan brings that up on a televised debate when we sat in the Advance editorial board the other day, and he said it was an honorable profession to be a defense attorney. The fact of the matter is, to criticize me for being a defense attorney is to criticize the Constitution of the United States. Everyone is entitled to a presumption of innocence. Everyone is entitled to a fair and adequate defense. But that still begs the question. There's an epidemic of prescription drugs on Staten Island. I haven't been the DA for the last 8 years. Dan Donovan has. 4 years ago, I sounded the alarm bells when I ran against Dan Donovan. 4 years ago, when I spoke to him on the phone, I said to him, do a good job. Protect the people of Staten Island. Take care of the drug problems. And 4 years later, we have an epidemic.
Okay, let's take a short break. I'll be back in a minute, Mr. District Attorney. Your office just announced a program that would, in some cases, have domestic abuse defendants wear an ankle bracelet to sort of track them. But that was announced this week, which is just days before Election Day. Should voters be concerned that the timing is political?
No, I think they should be concerned that it was Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October, and that these two things took a long time. I've been trying to get this passed for the last 3 years. I had the Domestic Violence Act of 2010, which I got passed in the state Senate, couldn't get passed in the Assembly. Domestic Violence Act of 2011, we got it passed in the Senate, couldn't get it passed in the Assembly. And after I'm victorious on Tuesday, we'll have the Domestic Violence Act of 2012, and we'll try it again. We don't have a crime of domestic violence in New York State. We treat a man abusing his wife or his girlfriend or his loved one the same as we treat a bar fight. We have too many men who disregard an order of protection that a judge has ordered him to stay away from the person that he's been abusing. We have now come up with a plan to put an ankle bracelet on that offender, and that will warn the woman who has the order of protection against him that he has just broken her zone of safety and that she can seek help.
Does it also, in that case, create a cause of action or create a crime?
Well, it would create a crime because once that's a criminal contempt charge that he has violated the order of protection that the judge has ordered him to stay away from her. In the past, we would need a woman to witness that. Now, the GPS system and the computer mechanism inside gives us the evidence. We don't even need a witness. The other thing is that what this does is that it alerts the woman. She will get a phone call and a text message that he's just broken the zone of safety. And occasionally, Errol, but not regularly, occasionally we will have a false accusation that someone violated an order of protection. This will actually protect an offender from a false accusation because the GPS will show where he was, and if he hadn't broken that zone of safety and somebody accuses him of doing so, it will add a layer of protection for him.
I have a question for you, Mr. Ryan. You criticized the district attorney for how he handled the relocation of the family of the 2-year-old girl, Samaya Bailey, who was shot through the eye, the Arlington Terrace houses. What would you have done differently?
What I would have done differently, assuming that a witness protection program actually exists on Staten Island, and I don't believe it does in quite the same way that the federal government has one, but you have to keep that family intact. I think what got lost in the shuffle here is that you had a 2-year-old child that was severely injured, and Mr. Donovan's suggestion was that her father should now be separated from her. So what he would see happen is that she would suffer this horrific injury and then suffer from the separation of her father. So what we did was we held a fundraiser for the Bailey family. I actually met the parents. I got an opportunity to hold this precious little girl and meet with her. We raised several $1,000s, over $4,000 for the family. We got the Teddy Atlas Foundation to donate a prosthetic eye, and we got a team of doctors to promise to do the reconstructive surgery at no cost to the family. That's what communities do. That's what neighbors do. We help each other. And his assertion that he would not move with the father, who are you going to put in witness protection program? Altar boys and Girl Scouts? We're only going to put the people with the most pristine records into a witness protection program? Sammy the Bull had committed 19 murders and he went into the witness protection program. This young man had some transgressions, 2 misdemeanors pending. Certainly, that little girl did not deserve that treatment from his office.
Tell him why Mike Ryan for district.
I have a law enforcement background. I'm a decorated law enforcement professional. I have seen the criminal justice system from all sides. The management side, the arrest side, and now in the legal side in the courtroom every day. I've been in the courtroom every day and dedicated my entire life to the criminal justice system. I did not retire from the practice of law and take myself out of the courtroom 20 years ago. I'm raising my family on Staten Island. My children's safety and security is paramount to me, and safety and security of all children and families will be paramount to me when I'm the district attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Mike's family's safety and security is paramount to me as well. Staten Island is the safest community of its size in all of America. When the FBI studied the crime trends in places that are similar to Staten Island, 450,000 to 500,000 people, Kansas City, Missouri, Omaha, Nebraska, Miami, Florida. Staten Island was the safest community of its size in all of America. That happened over the last 8 years. I helped make it that way, and I'm going to help keep it that way.
Okay, we're going to say good night to both of you. Wish you the best of luck on Tuesday, however it comes out. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Don't forget, Tuesday is Election Day, and so if you live on Staten Island, you will have these 2 men on the ballot.